Maria wiped down the counter as the morning sunlight streamed through the front windows of the restaurant. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pancakes filled the air. It was just another normal day. The kind where people came in for breakfast with tired eyes and quiet voices. She had worked here for almost 5 years. Every day felt the same, but not in a bad way. There was comfort in routine. She liked knowing which customers would sit at which tables and how old Mr. Henry always asked for extra crispy bacon with a wink. Maria liked to watch people. She could tell a lot about someone by the way they entered a room. Some came in like they owned the place and others like they didn't belong. She saw it all, but sometimes she saw things other people missed. Outside near the sidewalk, a man sat on the bench. He wore a dark coat and held a worn leather book. His shoes were scuffed and his hands looked tired, like they had held too much weight. People didn't look at him. Some turned their heads. Others frowned. A few whispered. Maria saw him every few days. He never asked for food. He didn't hold a sign or beg for money. He just sat quietly, as if waiting. Why does he always sit there? A new waitress asked once. Maria had only shrugged. Maybe he's waiting for someone. She didn't know his story, but something about him seemed peaceful. Lonely maybe, but peaceful. He looked people in the eye. He nodded when someone passed. That morning Maria had a strange feeling in her chest. Like something was going to happen. She looked at the man again and wondered who he really was. The man on the bench didn't move much. He sat still, his back straight, hands resting on his lap. His coat was clean but old and his shoes had been carefully laced. There was something proud about the way he sat, even if he was alone. Maria brought coffee to a couple by the window. The woman leaned in and whispered something while looking outside. Her husband nodded. Maria didn't need to hear the words. She had seen that look before. It was the kind people gave when they thought someone didn't belong. To most, the man looked homeless. He didn't carry a phone or backpack. His hair had gray in it, and his skin was dark and dry. But Maria noticed the small things. His book was always clean, his clothes were patched carefully, and he never looked lost. He looked like someone who used to have a lot, and had lost something but not himself. A few customers avoided the door nearest to him. Some made comments loud enough for Maria to hear. Can't they keep the area clean? Just another one of them. Maria bit her lip. She wasn't sure what she should say. She hated those words, especially the way they said them, like people were problems. Once, she had brought him a cup of coffee. He had thanked her softly, with kind eyes. He didn't drink it right away. He had just held it in his hands, warming them. "Are you waiting for someone?" she had asked. He smiled a little. "I usually am." That was all he had said. She never forgot that. That morning Maria noticed something different. The man had looked up every few minutes, watching the door. He wasn't just passing time. He really was waiting for someone. She wondered who. Inside the restaurant buzzed with voices and silverware clinking on plates. Outside, the man kept waiting, calm, patient, invisible to most. But Maria saw him. She always did. And this time so did someone else. Someone who wouldn't treat him with the same quiet respect. Someone who would make a choice that would change everything. The bell over the door jingled sharply and the air in the restaurant shifted. A tall white police officer stepped inside, his boots heavy on the tile floor. His uniform was neat, and his hands rested on his belt like he was always ready for something. People looked up when he entered. Some stopped talking. Others lowered their eyes. Maria stood near the coffee pot, her hands still. Something about the officer's face made her stomach tighten. It wasn't just his uniform, it was the way he looked around, like everything and everyone was a problem to fix. He glanced around and then pointed out the front window. "That man out there bothering anyone?" he asked loudly. The room went quiet. An older man near the door shrugged. "He's always sitting there, looks homeless." A woman at the counter added, "Makes customers uncomfortable. I wouldn't want him near my kids." Maria said nothing. Her mouth felt dry. The officer nodded once, like he had all the reason he needed. He turned and pushed the door open with a loud creak. Outside, the man on the bench looked up. He didn't move right away. He just blinked, calmly, as the officer walked toward him. Maria stepped closer to the window. She couldn't hear their words, but she could see the officer talking fast, waving his arm. The man stood up slowly. He wasn't angry. He didn't shout. He just said something and nodded. Then it happened. The officer shoved him. Hard. The man stumbled back, catching himself on the edge of the bench. A small group of people on the sidewalk gasped. One woman stepped back like she didn't want to be near him. The officer said something again, sharp, short, and pointed down the street. The man looked at him, eyes full of something that wasn't fear. It was disappointment, like he'd seen this before. Maria's hands shook. She looked around. No one moved. A few customers were watching. Some didn't care. One man even muttered, "Good, finally someone did something." Maria wanted to say something. Anything. But her voice was caught in her throat. The door opened again. The officer came back in like nothing had happened. "All clear," he said to no one in particular. Maria turned to the manager behind the counter. "He didn't do anything," she whispered. The manager looked away. Outside, the man stood still, his back to the restaurant. He didn't walk away. He just stood there breathing deeply, his hands shaking slightly. Maria blinked back tears. Something felt terribly wrong. And deep inside, she knew this wasn't over. The restaurant felt heavy. No one talked for a moment. After the officer sat down at the counter and ordered coffee like nothing had happened. He didn't look at anyone, and no one really looked at him either, but everyone felt it. Maria watched as a few people shook their heads. Some seemed to agree with what the officer had done. Others looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. The air buzzed with tension, like something bad had passed through, and left dust behind. A group near the window went back to eating slowly. One of them said, "You never know with those people. Better safe than sorry." His friends nodded. Maria wanted to shout, "What do you mean, those people?" But she didn't. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. Then a soft voice broke the silence. "Why did he push that man?" a little girl asked. She was sitting with her mom at the far table, swinging her legs under the chair. The mom hushed her quickly. "Eat your eggs, sweetheart." "But he didn't do anything," the girl said again, her eyes wide. "He was just sitting." The mother didn't answer this time. She looked down at her plate. Maria couldn't stop looking at the girl. Out of everyone in the room, she was the only one who said what needed to be said. And she was maybe 6. Maria's chest ached. What kind of world was this where kids had more heart than adults? She looked outside again. The man was gone. Just the bench remained. Empty. The space where he sat felt loud now. Like something had been taken, and everyone was pretending not to notice. Maria wiped her hands on her apron. Her eyes stung, and her throat felt tight. She had watched it happen. She hadn't done anything. That made her part of it, didn't it? In the back of her mind, a small voice whispered, "This isn't how it's supposed to be," but louder than that was the feeling in her gut. Something bigger is coming. And this story wasn't finished. It had been almost 20 minutes. The officer had finished his coffee and left without a word. The buzz of conversation slowly returned to the restaurant, but it wasn't the same. It felt forced. Flat. Like everyone was pretending nothing happened. Maria kept working, but her mind was elsewhere. She looked toward the door every few minutes, hoping, maybe even praying, that the man would come back. She just wanted to see that he was okay. And then he did. The door opened quietly, without the sharp ring of the bell this time. The man walked in, standing tall but tired. His eyes scanned the room slowly. People stared. Someone gasped. A couple near the door looked ready to get up and leave. But Maria didn't move. Her heart jumped into her throat. The man didn't say anything. He just stepped inside, walked over to a small table near the front window, and sat down, calm, proud, like he had every right to be there. And he did. The room went silent again. Then from the back hallway came the sound of heels clicking against the floor. Maria turned. It was Miss Ruth, the owner. She didn't come out to the front often. She usually worked behind the scenes, handling the books, the orders, the phone calls. But now she walked with purpose. Her chin high, her eyes sharp. She saw the man at the table. She didn't blink. Instead, she walked right up to him and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sorry I took so long, baby brother," she said, her voice calm but strong. The silence cracked. Gasps filled the room. Maria froze. "Brother." The man looked up and smiled softly. "Always on time, Ruth," he said. Miss Ruth turned around and faced the room. Her face was steady, but her voice was full of something strong, like thunder right before it hits. "This man," she said, looking at every table, "is not homeless. He's not a stranger. He's my brother. My family. And more than that." She paused. "He owns this place too." Maria's breath caught. The man everyone ignored, whispered about, pushed. He wasn't just someone. He was someone important. And the whole room knew it now. The room was frozen. Forks hovered in midair. Coffee cups stayed untouched. All eyes were on Miss Ruth and the man at the table. Maria's heart beat fast in her chest. No one had expected this. People were confused, shocked. Some looked embarrassed. The man, still calm, sat quietly, as Miss Ruth stood by his side. Her hand stayed on his shoulder, firm like a shield. "You all saw what happened earlier," she said, her voice still steady. "You saw how a police officer treated this man, without asking a single question, without knowing who he was. Just by looking at him." She let her words hang in the air. No one spoke. Maria looked around. Some people lowered their heads. Others stared blankly, unsure what to do with the truth that had just slapped them in the face. "This man is my brother, Dr. Lawrence Bennett," Miss Ruth continued. "He's a retired college professor. He taught history for over 30 years. He's traveled the world, written books, mentored students. He's also a co-owner of this restaurant. His money helped build it. His ideas shaped the menu. He has every right to sit wherever he wants, inside, outside, or on the moon, if he feels like it." Maria's eyes burned. Dr. Bennett didn't look proud. He didn't look angry. He looked tired, like this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Like it wouldn't be the last. The door opened again. The officer had returned. Maybe someone had called him, or maybe he had realized something was wrong. He paused when he saw Miss Ruth, then saw the man sitting there again. "What's going on?" he asked, frowning. Miss Ruth turned to him slowly. Her eyes were sharp now. Cold. "You shoved my brother," she said. "You humiliated him in front of everyone. And now I want you to apologize." The officer's face changed. "I didn't know. You didn't ask," she snapped. "You saw a black man sitting alone, and assumed the worst." He looked around the room. People were watching, waiting. Some nodded. Some crossed their arms. Even the girl from earlier was staring at him, her small face serious. "I'm sorry," the officer finally said, voice low. "To me?" Miss Ruth asked. He turned to Dr. Bennett. "I'm sorry, sir." Dr. Bennett nodded once. "I accept it," he said quietly. "But next time, treat people with dignity before you know their story, not after." The officer gave a quick nod and walked out again. The door closed behind him. Still no one moved. Miss Ruth sat across from her brother. Maria watched as they talked softly, heads bowed together like only siblings could do. And in that moment, the silence in the room didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like learning. Like truth finally had a seat at the table. The officer didn't come back. For a long while, no one said much. The restaurant felt different now. Like it had taken a deep breath, and didn't know how to let it out. Some people quietly asked for their checks. Others sat in silence, unsure what to say or do. A few looked toward Dr. Bennett. Maybe hoping to catch his eye. Maybe to say sorry. but not many were brave enough. Maria moved slowly. As she cleaned a table, she could still feel the weight of what had just happened. She thought of all the times the man had sat out there, waiting peaceful, invisible. How long had people walked by him and thought they knew his story? She thought about how she hadn't spoken up when it mattered. It stung. But then Miss Ruth caught her eye from across the room. She smiled softly, and gave her a small nod, just enough to say, "It's okay. You saw him. You see us." Maria nodded back. The little girl and her mother were leaving. As they passed Maria, the girl tugged on her mom's hand. "Mom," she said, "I want to be like her." "Who?" the mom asked. "The lady who stood up for her brother," the girl said. Maria blinked hard to hold back tears. "Me too," the mom whispered. And they walked out. The sun shone through the windows again. The light felt warmer this time. Softer. Dr. Bennett remained seated at the window, sipping a new cup of coffee. Miss Ruth sat beside him, talking and laughing quietly. Maria stood near the counter and watched them. She felt something grow in her chest. Not just sadness anymore. Hope. And a promise to never stay silent again. By the end of the day, most of the customers were gone. The chairs were stacked. The floors swept. The restaurant was quiet again, just like in the early morning, but it wasn't the same quiet. It felt fuller now, like the walls had heard something important, and would never forget it. Maria wiped the counter one last time, and glanced at the table by the window. Dr. Bennett and Miss Ruth were still sitting there, sharing a slice of pie. They weren't talking much anymore, just listening. Together. Maria thought about everything that had happened. About how one moment, a shove, a word, a truth, had changed how people saw the world. Or maybe how they saw each other. She thought about the officer, and how easy it had been for him to act on a guess. She thought about all the people who had watched, and stayed quiet, and she thought about herself. She hadn't stopped it. She hadn't spoken up when she should have. But now she knew better. Next time she would. Dr. Bennett. Bennett stood and walked over to the counter where Maria stood. He looked at her kindly. His eyes gentle but strong. "Thank you," he said. Maria frowned. "For what?" "For seeing me. Even when others didn't." Her throat tightened. "I'm sorry I didn't do more." He smiled. "You will next time. That's what matters." And with that, he turned and left with his sister. The door closing softly behind them. Maria stood for a moment, letting the words sink in. The world didn't change in one day. But maybe, just maybe, it could start with a moment like this. A moment when people chose to see each other. To care. To stand up. And maybe to be better. If this story moved you or made you think differently, please like and share it with others. Leave a comment to share your thoughts or personal experiences. We'd love to hear your voice. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life inspired stories that shine a light on truth, dignity, and the strength of standing up for what's right.